Welcome. I am going to cover for today. We're going to do a little bit of the Life After trial. And the reason why I'm doing it this way is because there's there's quite a bit to be said. I mean, we all go through the process of being on actual trial. I mean, not being on trial, but following the trials that are active. Diddy's trial being one of them, being a federal trial, a RICO trial, being a trial on one of the great moguls of our time, and all of these things. So it becomes important, I think, to follow what happens after the fact. And we know already that the pardon was a part of this afterlife process, for lack of a better description, for Sean Puffy Combs or Diddy Combs. So we'll start there. But we're also build on top of that by sort of building on how do you what does rebuilding for him look like? What is his new normal? Because it's not pretty much going to go back to the way that it was, or so it's looking like that so far. But let's see. So let's see. The legal team for Sean Combs has already contacted the Trump administration on the potential pardon. They have spoken to him following their client's conviction, their client being Puffy Combs, and on prostitution, other related charges. Now, while Trump didn't acknowledge the contact, he said, yes, we did, we made contact. He also stated that Combs' past hostile comments might factor into his decision. Now, he didn't directly say that, but he basically directly said that. It was basically saying, he used the term Combs's past hostile, in quotations, comments toward him made his pardon more difficult, or his decision on his pardon. So they're not. Well, it makes you wonder, right? You have to think about it in such a way. You have to think about it as, is that a biased statement stating that he's not going to give him a pardon based on his past behaviors? His, meaning Diddy's past behaviors? Or is he just kind of factoring that into the fact that he even bothered to ask? I mean, I guess if you look at it in that way. Welcome. Thank you for those of you who are here that are just now joining. We're going to do a life after. We all covered the trial. As I stated earlier, we all followed that about as closely as you can follow something. And we followed that trial and we went through that trial, and now most people just leave it, right? You might do little pieces here and there, but I didn't want to do that. What I want to know, and you guys can help me figure this out, is what happens after? What happens after that? When everybody leaves the story, all the lights go down, and you're left with, a potential pardon, possibly, but also living with the past comments you made about the person you're asking to give you one. Okay? We're talking about Diddy. Life after the trial. Where do we go from here? How does he recover? If he can recover? Where do you go? We know he's asking for a pardon, but it looks like, and the thing about consequences, this is the best example to give it. You don't ever know what they're going to be. I love when people say, oh, I'll just do it. I'll take the consequences. You know what I'm saying? I'll take it. If some people might say for example, I'll do it. If I go to jail, I go to jail. I don't even care. But that means that's not going to be your consequence. You understand? Consequence, by definition, makes you pay, which means they're individualized. It's going to be something you don't expect, because if you expected it, then it's not a consequence. So I say all that to say this. His pardon, Puffy Combs' legal team, went to the president, who used to be friends, and stated he was friends with Puffy Combs originally. And then Diddy went off and said some bad comments about him in the press. This is all pre-trial. Now, what is the president saying? Puffy comes to that very person he said bad comments about and asked him for a favor. Because basically a pardon is a favor. If you look at the first video, it tells you. Is everyone here? You following me? Questions, comments? I said pay back like a mug. Like a mother. Oh, pay back like a mother. Yeah, I mean, I was just making that statement because he probably didn't think about it at the time. Like when you're just going, you're just living life, you're living it a certain way, you're doing certain things. You're just, you feel your ego is taking over a little bit. So you say things. He probably was just making the statement. Whatever he said at the time. I don't know whatever the president is, or he wasn't president at the time, even maybe. Just whatever. You're just making comments. You're just living your life. You're just living in ego at that time. You know what I mean? And you're just saying what you think you can say. He probably wasn't thinking at one point he would ever need him like that. Because he's on top of the world. Now, I'm not putting anybody down. People do that, and consequences come, regardless. Or karma, for those of you that don't understand how consequences work. Karma works the same way. Almost the same way. It's supposed to be what you give out, you give back. A consequence is different than that. Somebody's saying karma's no, it's not karma like that. Karma is really what you put out comes back. A consequence means you have to sort of almost pay for what you did, which means it has to come in a form that you're going to suffer from. Does that make a little bit more? Because I want you to understand where I'm going with the life after thing. Once you've done all this stuff, consequences come after the fact. Once you've done all this stuff, and you thought you understood what was going to happen to you, and you could take the worst case scenario, your karma, so to speak, will come back to you. That's why people do things, especially if you're doing stuff to people, and you think you're okay. Right? Am I wrong? Makes sense. Maybe they really weren't friends at the time. No, I'm not saying that he was wrong. I'm saying he was just saying what he thought at the time. But maybe not necessarily how it would be received. Welcome everybody. How you doing? Are we all here with me? Saying things and doing things and reactions to things all have what we call consequences. When I say life after, it's almost like saying consequences after, right? You said 47 has some of his own coming. Well, I'm sure he does. I'm not saying that. I wasn't assuming that the attack might have not even been reasonable at the time. I don't know why he decided to do it. He meaning Sean Combs. I wasn't in his head at the time. Yeah, I mean, I think just by definition, that's what that means. Let's just go ahead and define that so we can all kind of keep up with the different concepts. A consequence. Not that we don't know the definition, but I want to break it down a little bit. A result or effect of an action or condition. Importance or relevance, right? Of no consequence, right? But we're not using it in that way. We're using it as a result or an effect of a condition. Now, why do you suppose the word condition was used in the definition? Right, it's like a circumstance, right? You said go to work. I don't know about if I'm going to work. I'm just saying. I just like to learn from things that happen. So I say things in a fashion with which I'm learning something. And then you just coming along and helping me learn it. Because I get a lot from you guys too. So it's because it means the word conditioning is used in the definition of consequence because it says the process of training or accustoming a person to a behavior in a certain way. So they're saying condition, right? So in the definition of a consequence, right, it uses that word conditioning. It doesn't say payment for, acting up. It says condition. It means over time you've allowed yourself to do something that ended in this sort of result. So at the time, I'm sure when he made these comments, and he didn't think he was going to need a pardon. He didn't even think he was probably even going to go to trial for anything. He meaning Sean Combs. You just don't. We've all been in a place where we've gotten caught up. Because this is how you get caught up. Because in most things, when you're building something, it starts slowly. Right? As the momentum builds, in order to trick you into continuing that behavior, you have to get some rewards. And the trick is to see if those rewards are real or false. Right? So he's out, he meaning Sean Combs, he's off, he's doing, bringing it, reeling it back in. He's talking about, whatever that interview was about. And he talks about 47, who 47 still thought they were friends. And suddenly he doesn't support him anymore. Fast forward, something that he didn't expect happen, meaning Sean didn't expect happen. He goes to trial for RICO of all things. Meets the RICO charge, but he still has other convictions. And now he has to ask the very person that he basically denounced as his friend to help him. And I say that not because I feel like, oh, that's comeuppance. No, I'm saying it because 47 stated it. When making a decision about this pardon, he made reference to that was part of his decision. It may factor into his decision. These comments that were made that were hostile towards him. So I'm not saying that. Somebody's asking. No, I'm not saying all that. 47 said it. So when 47 said it, I'm reporting about what's happening with the pardon. So that was part of it. It was part of it were these comments that Diddy had made about him that he said were hostile. Does that necessarily mean they were bad? In the minds of the person listening, I don't know. He just said hostile. He didn't say bad comments or he denounced me as a friend or, when we weren't cool anymore. He didn't say anything like that. He just said reference to that he had heard these hostile comments. He meaning Trump had heard the hostile comments given, to the press by Diddy or 47, right? Hi, welcome. Well, hi, you guys. Hi, welcome. I love when people I've seen before come in. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thanks for being here. We're doing Puffy. We're doing Diddy. We're doing Sean Combs' life after. How does he rebuild back? And the first part of that, concept is asking for a pardon from 47, who used to be his friend. According to maybe both of them. Puffy never said that was his friend. I don't know. I can't. I don't really know. I don't think he didn't say he wasn't his friend. So, and they hung out and they've got pictures of them together. So, you could look at it. Somebody said just because you say that doesn't mean you're his friend. You can say that, but not from the history we remember. You would have to be super fake for you to be spending that much time with somebody and now they're suddenly not your friend. I don't think he was saying it in reference to that. And again, I'm not in anybody's head, but what it looked like when I watched the clip, it looked like he was just saying it at the time. Like they had been friends, but then your friend goes rogue and you're like, wait a minute, No, I can't agree with what you're saying. I can't agree with what's happening right now. I don't think he was saying it, if I just, in my opinion of what I viewed, uh, as if to say we were never friends. I think he was saying it he meaning Sean Combs was saying it like to say, I'm not agreeing with what you're doing right now, type of thinking. I don't think it came out like, what? Friends? We were never friends. Like, are you serious right now? This is what I think of him. I don't think it came across that way. I think it came across more like, what are you doing right now? Keep it up. I might have to disassociate myself with this. It's kind of like that. I think it was said more in those statements, in that, context, rather than it being something else. Welcome, everybody. I appreciate you. Thank you for those of you coming in. We are talking life after trial for Sean Diddy Combs. Where do we go with him from the trial? We talked about little things. The interesting part when I say, I put this in the context of what I was writing when I, started this live out, and I talked a little bit about, to some people he was, sort of a symbol of justice for RICO, type of thing. Because whenever you beat a RICO charge, it's not easy for criminals. Now you have to think that not that everybody that supports Diddy is a criminal. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying he went back to jail and they gave the man a standing ovation. It wasn't as if they were worrying so much about what he had done. They were saying the scales of justice can work sometimes, because you beat a charge that is almost 100% certain you're going to get convicted of. Kind of gives you a little cred, right? You get some legal street cred. He had street cred anyway, probably, but I mean, it gives you some. Somebody said no, he didn't. No, I don't think people thought Puffy was innocent. Who said that? We are talking about Diddy. We're talking about life after trial for him. And we were talking about the pardon. So when I talked about consequences, it is because, for those of you I have to, explain for the newer people coming in, it was because I was talking about consequences for the statements he made, he meaning Sean Combs, on the air to the public in an interview about President 47. Now, if you look at my first video, 47 is one of the few people that can actually grant a pardon. Everybody can't just give out a pardon. Has to be certain people. And when he did not say he made a decision, but he referenced the fact that Sean Combs made those, what he called hostile, he meaning 47. I'm not saying this is his comments, that Sean Combs had made hostile comments towards him. So that's what we're talking about. So when I said what a consequence, what a good example of one, because here you are just saying stuff. You don't think you're ever going to meet the person. Or you want to cut ties. I don't know whatever he was planning on doing at the time. And then all of a sudden that very person that you didn't think you needed is the one person, the only person that can give you what you're asking for. It's the only one person that can help you. It's how ironic is that, and that's why I said, man, consequences are never what you think they are. Not ever. And I was saying, by definition, a consequence is not supposed to be what you think it is. It's supposed to come to you so that you have some sort of unexpected pain as a result of, right? Or some unexpected, circumstance as a result of. And I said, people often say, oh, I'll just take the consequences, as if they know what they are. You don't know what a consequence is. What you're really meaning is, I will take the karma. Because that's supposed to be, you put out that energy comes back to you. You're saying, well, I can take what I put out. I don't care. That's, I'm about that life. But if you're really not, because a consequence is not that. So that's how this whole thing opened up for those of you just, thank you. Okay. You guys came in the middle. You came in the middle of me talking. Got you. I understand. Yeah. So pardons. For those of you that did not see the first video. So there's not a decision made. It's not a bad thing. Sometimes you would think, him waiting or sort of lagging on a decision can be considered a bad thing. But I think when it's something like this, that's not bad. That means you're getting realistic consideration rather than it sort of being sort of quick to answer. Especially if the person is ambivalent about what they want to do or in some sort of flux. Thank you. Welcome. Yeah, I mean, well, I can answer that with this. So the White House has not commented on the existence or non-existence of any clemency requests, right? So they're not officially saying that they even really asked. He was convicted, Combs meaning was convicted July 2nd, and faces sentencing in October. So, okay, so that's another part. It's not being recognized whether the petition was filed or rather they just had a meeting and asked for it. And I'm not sure why that's in secrecy, but that's kind of what it is. You think somebody saying if they were going to pardon him, they would have just said so. No, not necessarily. It is a decision to make. It's a decision. So you wouldn't just necessarily just go all in. I mean, unless you just had your mind made up already. If 47 was like, forget it, I'm going to pardon him no matter what happens. It's just going to happen. He probably would have, they would have done the formal, they would have just announced everything. I mean, not announced it, but they would have acknowledged the petition at least. I think the fact that he didn't necessarily confirm nor deny means that there's, things to be considered. So it only states that the team reached out to the president, 47, seeking a pardon. So reaching out could have meant anything. It could have been they just had a conversation. So and then the response from Trump basically was he did confirm in an interview that he has been in contact with the legal team. But he did note, of course, in the past, criticisms of him by Combs, and then that the decision was more complex. This is according to The Guardian, okay? That's sort of a paraphrase. But yeah, so, okay, so the charges is Combs was found guilty. Now you have to know the charges, like what they are, so how this pardon where this pardon will apply. Sorry. Never mind, just lock him under the jail. I don't know. It kind of doesn't work like that, but okay. Now, the charges are Combs was found guilty of 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. Okay, he faces a maximum of 20 years in prison. And he was acquitted of more serious charges, of course, we know as the sex trafficking and the racketeering conspiracy. That would be the RICO charge. But he was convicted of something because a lot of times when people come in, they go, I thought he beat that. The other charges he did get. He does a maximum of 20 years in jail. That's a long time. I mean, it sounds lower considering what would have happened if he got convicted of RICO. It's lesser than that, but at the same time, it's still a lot of time to have to spend in that type of prison, especially where he is. Right? Questions, comments, anything? Sentencing is its own hearing. That's why. It's its own court date. Somebody's asking why not sentence him at the time. I don't know. The court doesn't work like that. You just have to actually schedule sentencing. So it's like in the time of the convenience of the court most of the time. Or sometimes the lawyers will agree on a date. It's its own separate thing. You don't just run them all together. Because there's maybe a lot of motions and petitions that could be filed in the meantime. Same thing like pardons can be filed in the meantime. But if you go straight to sentencing, it doesn't give your legal teams a chance, either side, or both sides, a chance to file other motions. So let's do some specifics on the pardon. Trump has previously granted pardons to individuals convicted of various offenses, including some with high profile cases. He has also pardoned individuals after their conviction, but before their sentencing. So here we go. Here's a good example of what I just explained about the motions. You can file it in between the date of the sentencing and actually being convicted of the crime. So it literally just verifies what I just said. But the important part of that sentence wasn't even that as much. Hi, how you doing? I'm okay. Yeah, I'm glad you're here, and that's actually a good question. Let me answer that later. Let me finish this first. The important part of that little statement is that Trump has given pardons before. So it's not like Trump's I'm sorry, Sean's legal team or Diddy's legal team is on some random tangent. They're like on a tangent. It's legit. They're going to somebody they know has done this before in similar cases. So it wasn't like they just randomly asked. I mean, they were asking because it's a likelihood that this could happen for this particular client. Pardons aren't usually handed out, as we know from the first video, but in this case, because of the relationship between the two people, because this particular president has granted pardons already, shows that and in high profile situations. So it's almost tailor-made that you would be remiss if you didn't file as the defense team. I mean, or you just wouldn't be as, on it if you didn't take advantage of this situation. Legally, as it were. But there are the actions of his client, as a defense attorney. It's always your client's actions that somehow could create a problem. It's not even anything that Sean Combs had done recently. It's stuff that he's done in the past that came back to make it almost haunting for him. Re-rose like a phoenix type of thing. Why does the legal process take so long? Because you don't want to although there have been people that have been wrongly convicted, this is not taken away from their plight, but it's intended, shall I say, to prevent that from happening. You're innocent until proven guilty, although it's mostly guilty until proven innocent. But technically speaking, the length of the trials, the fact that you have a trial, the fact that you go, the fact that you traditionally don't have to bypass it, and all of these types of things come from that. It comes from not wanting somebody to be too quickly sent to conviction and they be innocent. So it's supposed to be designed to get out all of the stuff out, and then you go in and make a decision. And then sentencing the same. It gives you other legal avenues and a way to get out of, not get out of, but to offer the best for your client, especially if you're a defense attorney or a prosecution team that has lost their case in the trial, during the trial. Yeah, so we are talking Sean Combs, Life After. It's another thing, too. We can combine that with just what is he going to do after that. He doesn't get pardoned. Watch the first video if you need details about that. But he goes to jail. Depending upon how many years he has, right? Say he goes for the full 20. Maybe, what happens, what kind of life, what's that day going to look like for him every day? Knowing now, having hope when it's a trial. How many times have you, well, not everybody, but if you've had a chance to talk to somebody that's been during a trial, they're behind bars, in your mind, it feels temporary. With the hope that you're going to get out at any day, or as soon as it's over. Or get some sort of reprieve, in the sense that you don't have to pay any fines or anything. But when you are sentenced, and the jail cell closes, now you know for the longest period of time that's going to be your new normal. Now it's life behind bars for the duration. And that's got to do something to your psyche, because it's going to knock down some of that confidence you had, or that hope that you had that you won't be there that long. That becomes reality, and now suddenly that's your new normal. Somebody's saying is that you've been in jail before? 8 years? Yeah, that's a long time. No joke. Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, it's not like you don't adjust, I guess. I don't know. I'm guessing, I'm 100% guessing when it comes to that. I've just met people that have been in jail. But I don't know. I personally would not want to know that experience. But people say, yeah, You're saying it doesn't hit you right away. Oh, somebody's saying that doesn't hit you right away. So you're saying you're just in there, and then all of a sudden, one of the weeks you're in, like one day, you sit and think about how long that actually is. Yeah, that's wow. Do you still feel for this person? I don't want to say your name out loud, but do you feel, or even your sign? Um, do you think at the beginning it's still kind of temporary, or you're just hoping it's temporary, or your mind just hasn't settled into? Oh, I won't call it out. I'm sorry. No, don't. They can't even see you. This is why I do it this way, so people can say stuff and nobody know who's saying it. Yeah, so you're saying, like, at first you're still not there. Like, you don't think you're actually going to be there, kind of thinking. Not that I understand. You're not saying that you falsely don't understand. You understand that you have this time, but in your mind, you haven't settled into the fact of how long it actually is. So at first, you're just kind of still in the temporary state of thinking type of thing. Okay. And your first really bad day. Oh, so this person has been to jail for a real long time, actually. And they're saying that at first, when they were there, their experience was that they did think it was still kind of temporary, and they still hadn't settled into the fact of how long they were going to be there. And then all of a sudden, they had a bad day there. And in the midst of that bad day, when you don't have I guess your normal comforts and stuff, I don't want to add stuff to you, what you're saying. You just, yeah, he's saying just in the midst of that day, you just realize how bad it's going to be. And this is your new regular life. Like, then it settles in. Oh, yeah, that's deep, and actually could be helpful. I like that. He said helpful for people that haven't been through, you don't want to. Yeah, absolutely. And could it be a little bit too, for those of you, there's a lot of you now coming in with that. Yeah, I mean, could it be a little bit too that you started out not thinking you were going to end up there, kind of thing? Some people said yes. Somebody said no. Somebody said yes, they knew. This is a good one. I won't say anything out loud. I'm just gonna say, you guys, for right now, with this type of information, I'm not gonna say like who's saying it, but that's an interesting. The one person said he knew. I'm assuming it's a guy. Okay, he knew that he was gonna end up there probably, and then when he got there, it was a whole different story. Like suddenly he realized where he was, kind of thinking. So you always thought you could maybe handle that situation. Not that you couldn't handle it, but the fact that you didn't know how long, like when you're there that long, kind of thing. Yeah. So correct me if I'm wrong. You're saying once you realized you were going to be there, and what type of place it was, you realized you gave up. You gave up a lot. You realized how much you gave up. Wow. Wow, that's not very insightful. Thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate it. I know, yeah, you can do that here. Yep, we definitely can. And maybe somebody listening will get something out of that, because there's different approaches to that because some people are saying, no, I never thought I'd end up there. Of course not. You were just doing what you were doing. Yep. Does that mean you kind of, I call it living on autopilot. You're just kind of going with some stuff. Gang life. Yeah. Yeah, but is it worse when you're not in a expected situation? Like if you're not doing something you know it results in there? Or is it just as bad either way? Somebody, questions, comments? Depends. Somebody said depends. Depends on where you are, where you are mentally at the time. Oh, okay. At the time that you actually go to jail. I got you. Wow, that's interesting. Okay, so we have to wrap it around. So bringing that around, and thank you guys for who all shared that. I appreciate that. That's very insightful. See, it's not all about me here. I love when you guys comment because they're comments that are very, very informing. It's a very good audience. So you think even in the quiet moments that Diddy does see that, like when he's there now, or do you think he's still thinking it's kind of temporary? He hasn't been sentenced yet, so maybe it hasn't fully hit him. He still has hope because he could get a pardon and won't have to serve any time. Questions, comments? Yeah, so what happens if he does get pardoned and he doesn't go to jail? Let's talk about that. Let's talk a little bit about how do you rebuild. You can't go back, right? He's not going to be able to go back to hiding, meaning everybody knows now. So you sort of can't, you can't put on another persona. Not that he was faking, because he did say he was the party guy and this is what he was doing and all of these things. But once you go into the stigma of having gone to trial for those things and having gone to jail at this point, how does that affect you business-wise? Because the business world is not as forgiving. Now, entertainment business world, depending upon where you go after that, might be forgiving, but I'm not so sure. I think music in particularly will be a little more forgiving for him having gone to jail. There's plenty of people that are still out in the music industry, and they had plenty of convictions. It doesn't necessarily color him in that way, I don't think. Am I wrong about that? Somebody said that's what I'm saying. He was a mogul then, he'll be a mogul now. Do you think he'll still go right back to what he was doing? I mean, not the salacious part of it, but just business-wise. He should. No, he's finished. Finished, though? We've got we always in here have conflicting views. We had conflicting views during the trial. Everybody has conflicting views on this particular subject. In here, maybe because I allow people to say both. I didn't just condemn him immediately, but because it's the music industry. I think the general consensus is because of where he came from. He came from music. And the music industry has a lot of people that have done a lot of. Yeah, but Suge Knight is in jail, though. There's no more death row like that. You think he would be able to rebuild if he got out? Probably not. But first of all, the music industry in general took a turn because we have to think about, okay, so Russell Simmons is not as active, right? We had the death of the Murder Inc. Gotti. We have Puffy being in trial, potentially going to federal prison for a long time. And we have, of course, Suge Knight, who has been in jail for I don't even know how long, right? So we've got Jay-Z left, maybe, but he's off doing business stuff with the Super Bowl and whatnot. And, but not necessarily. Well, I guess, yeah, technically you could still say kind of Jay-Z, right? Who else we got? We have, but that were like moguls that were not just artists, but just people that were actually running. Do you count 50 Cent in that? Somebody said hockey sticks. No. What do you mean hockey sticks? No. Isn't he a business mogul? You kind of have to include 50 Cent. Come on. Oh, somebody said we are not including him. You have to include him. What? What's with all the hostility? I got a wave of stuff on that one. Is it for you supporters of Sean Combs because he goes in on him all the time? No. He hasn't done anything. What do you mean? Oh, you mean in music outside? Because he's a businessman for sure. You have to give him that. Yeah, because he's making television shows. What do you mean? He's still doing something. He just switched mediums. You have to include that. There's no way you cannot include that. I'm going to include 50 Cent. I'm sorry. Don't send me hate mail. But you have to put him in there. But not with music, you guys are saying. Oh, okay. He's still a presence. You know, I don't know. We can debate that. Somebody debate me. You guys give me yes and no's and then tell me why. Then we'll go back over that and see that. But I'm just saying the instability of music at this point. Much like many things in the world today. Music just being one of them. So now we have another major one sort of out of circulation, and we don't even know for how long. So what do you do after that? On one hand, it could be potential for you to even take up more territory, just because there's not a lot of people still active. But also, you know, it could create a lot of resistance to working with you type of thing. And you do need other business people to help in business. Business, we all work together. No matter how individual it may look like, you still need other people. Yeah. Oh, interesting. Oh, we got some. So, stop. I said I had to include. So people are going in and saying 50 Cent is not in that group of people. I mean, technically, I would say he is. I would say he's making shows. He's doing his thing. Nothing. We're gonna let some new people talk. I don't know. I would say yes, but I guess you guys are overwhelmingly saying yeah. Okay, we got yeses here, but not as many as we have. He's not. Would you say that he was one of the people that gave us the first insights on what Sean Combs was doing behind the scenes? Because his baby's mama was involved? You're saying that's why he did it? No, I think he was talking about that before then. He was the one that told that story. He meaning, now we're talking about 50 Cent in relation to Sean Combs. 50 Cent was the first person to tell the story about how Sean Combs, and nobody, I mean, we did not believe him because it was so intensely told that it sounded like a true story, that Sean Combs and him were supposed to hang out, and he was like, let's hang out, and he was like, I'll take you shopping, and he was like, what? And I guess that's something that you wouldn't, a guy wouldn't say to another guy that was, not of a questionable sexuality. And I say it that way because women ask each other to go shopping all the time. So we don't really consider you questionable because you're asking to go shopping with me. I mean, we just go. But I guess that's something that in that context did not fit. Like, you wouldn't ask another man something like that, according to 50 Cent. So, and when he told that story, everyone laughed because it was kind of funny, like his reaction. And everybody's like, oh, come on. He probably didn't mean it like that. Or, oh, come on. He's probably just saying it. And then when Sean Combs reacted, he said, well, he needed some clothes. So, we all kind of laughed it off. But he was sort of bringing to the attention that he was uncomfortable in the situation. And that there was more to him, him meaning Sean Combs, than we were all thinking. And I don't think at the time, because Sean had a lot of supporters at the time, that people really believed him in the text that he was using it in. We might have believed the story and then laughed a little bit because we were like, he probably didn't mean it like that. Really. But I mean, if you think about it, if you look back, he was just mostly revealing that the fact that there was more there, more to the person than what people would realize, kind of thinking. I mean, I'm not saying anything. I'm just giving facts. That's what actually happened. So I wasn't adding anything to that story or anything. I mean, he cussed. He said, "What the F did you say?" But I didn't repeat that part of it. But that's what he said. He, meaning 50 Cent, said about Puffy, and we all know that now. And this was before the trial, before all that stuff came out. What happens to Puffy's properties? Well, he's been convicted, so I don't think he gets to keep them. I'd have to check on that because it depends on, well, it depends on sentencing, number one, but it also depends on a lot of the circumstances with what happens to the property after that. I mean, does it go to his kids? Where does, I don't know. I don't think he gets to keep them, if I remember correctly, once you're convicted. Somebody fact check me on that, or I'll actually check that and figure it out. Let's find out. Any other questions, comments? I like asking you guys because I wouldn't have gotten that stuff about being in jail so insightfully if I don't, get you guys, if I don't ask you guys to help me do this. Because I think that I couldn't have done that any better. I really don't. And it's not the first time that this audience has been comfortable enough to share, who they are with people in here. So I like that, and I want to thank you guys that share so openly, especially some of you that give your opinion, because it's the opposite of what, started out. People really wanted him convicted of straight RICO, and they really wanted him locked under the jail. And for those of you that are in here saying that, I'm not overlooking you. I get that. But it's the general consensus. So I generally grab the ones that are not necessarily everybody's thought process. Someone mentions every time that I'm not on camera. Every time, guys. Every time. It's just easier. I can do other stuff while I'm, you guys are funny. Thank you. You missed my smile. I appreciate that. So, I think the general thought is it's not going to be hard for him to build that particular type of job. I think the business part might be more difficult for him. Maybe not getting other artists and stuff like that. What do you think? Did you think that it's just in general he'll be fine? Maybe. Okay, so here's an interesting. So I was thinking of something else, and I ended up seeing this, that he makes his own food in prison. I wonder how accurate that is. I don't know. I have not fact checked that, but it seems like Sean Combs is making his own food. I only say that could be possible, and I say it because, remember, they were sued. This particular prison was sued for the conditions, and one of them was that there were maggots in the food. In 2021, this prison in New York. It's dilapidated as what I concern. I mean, literally, they took the time to take out a lawsuit on this prison. This is how bad it was that they took the time to do that. What very few prisons have ever had that even when they were in bad conditions. Imagine how much more bad they were, that the fact that there's a lawsuit about it. I don't even know if he's in general population. I doubt it. I know R. Kelly's in there, but he's not in general population. I mean, I would say I would veer more towards no, but who knows? Somebody knows. I mean, if you know, let me know. Somebody said he isn't. He's not. It's probably true. Yeah, that jail is no joke. It's a federal jail. It's it's a prison. You know what I mean? Like, um, so let's following Sean Combs' split verdict, where he was found guilty on 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution, but acquitted of sex trafficking and racketeering. It is unlikely that he will forfeit his entire fortune. That would include properties. However, okay, the federal government might pursue a forfeiture, okay, of assets directly linked to the prostitution charges, and the civil lawsuit may still significantly impact his wealth. So we already know that his wealth was impacted. I did report on that in one of my reports. Yes, he's still a multimillionaire, but he's been cut in maybe half so far, and this is just a lot of it in legal fees, right? Legal fees, just loss of of loss of properties, and even they don't pay for that when they kick your door in. They, meaning like the feds, or the SWAT team, does not pay for that. You have to fix that on your own. Any ransacking, anything that they have to bust, they have to bust the door open. If they have to hit a wall to get stuff on the inside of the wall, I mean, to whatever it does to make the search, they don't pay for that. So whatever damages are done, he's going to have to cover that if he still has that property. He, meaning Sean Combs. So let's break down a little bit. Let's break down some of the legal. I love to do that. Up to, follow-up things that can happen. So this is life after the trial. So I'm not going to rehash the trial because I see some of you already asking me questions about the trial. It's not necessarily the trial. We're talking about after the trial, life after. This is where he is now. We're talking about where Sean Combs is now. So for those of you that are joining us, we have been talking about life after the trial for Sean Combs. Where does he go from here? What's life could be like for him in prison? What becomes his new normal after today? Can he rebuild his businesses back? What happens to his properties? What type of legal actions he can take. And we're going to go into that just a little bit right now. What happens? Let's just ask ourselves, what happens? Everybody follows the pre-part. Before, oh my God, he got arrested. Let's all go in. And oh my God, he's going through the trial. Let's all go in. And then the trial happens, and guess what? It's left with the defendant having to now move forward. And how do you do that? Can you do that? Where do you go from here? So the first step for his legal team was to ask for a pardon. And we covered that earlier in the beginning of this video. To ask for a pardon. And I'm going over it again because these videos are going to be kind of long. So that was the first step. Now, it coincidentally, whether it's beneficial or non-beneficial, he has to ask 47. 47 and him used to be friends. He and 47 used to be friends. I said that wrong. So Sean Combs used to be friends with our president. One of the people that can do a pardon, the main person that can grant a pardon, is the president. The president did acknowledge the hostile comments that were made pre even getting arrested by Sean Combs regarding 47. So that pardon was asked of 47 by the legal team for legal purposes, because we're going into the legal part of it. Legally, they asked for a pardon from 47 because 47 had given pardons in similar cases, under similar circumstances. So that's why. So it makes sense. Step number one, good defense team. First of all, good defense team anyway, because they beat a RICO charge. That is very rare. So they're continuing their job. But guess what? That costs money. That type of defense is not cheap. Okay? When you have a legal team, you have dream team, that's costly. They're not going to do all that work for free. Okay? And if the more you are charged with, the heavier the charges, the better team you need. Okay? He's also a man that can pay for that. But it also is going to cost him, because from point A to point B, I reported on this already, Sean has already dropped almost half in his wealth. Now, he was pretty wealthy before. So it's not going to, he's not going to need a 10 cup and stand outside, the courthouse. He's going to be okay. But how much more is he standing to lose, right? So let's talk first and break down some of the legal parts of it. So a criminal forfeiture. While acquitted of the RICO charges that could have led to the seizure of his entire fortune. So think about that. First of all, they were trying to get him off on RICO, not just legally or to vindicate him, but they were also trying to make sure he kept his money. That's what make that fight so heavy, because he could have left there completely broke. Right? So they're still trying to prevent that, because remember, a pardon will exonerate him from all of the things that he would have to do in consequence for this conviction. So that includes fines. Okay? So the prosecutors might still seek a forfeiture of his assets, proving to be used in a sort of a derived from the 2 counts of transportation and engaged in prostitution. So remember when we said they're not sentenced right away? It's for this reason. So take it back. Now I'm bringing it around. Motions can be filed in the meantime. So here's everybody doing their job. The prosecution's like, we're going to go after forfeiture of the assets, because guess what? Once he was not convicted of RICO, he is now convicted of 2 counts. Here's the next legal action. And the defense team says, well, guess what? We're going to ask for a pardon, because now we're going to make sure not only does he keep his money, but he doesn't have to serve any time. And this is going to go away. And then we're going to probably file, I think they would file when the time comes for it to be taken off his record, to get expunged. But they're not at that point yet. They're only at the point of asking for the pardon. And I think if he's not given the pardon is when the prosecution's actions will kick in. And they will go for that forfeiture based on the charges that he was convicted of, the 2 counts of the transportation to engage in prostitution. Questions, comments? I don't want to overload you guys with too much legal jargon or anything like that. So does that basically mean they're going after his money? They meaning whom? The prosecution? Yes. That's what it means. All of his assets, technically speaking. To what extent? I mean, it would have happened real fast with the RICO charge, but since he wasn't convicted of that, they're doing kind of the same thing, just with a different, the motion meaning what you file to the court changes. The intent is still the same, but it's the motion it's all of the monies. You have to understand that he's convicted of a charge, so you can't just say I'm going after his money. It doesn't work like that. It has to be what in reference to what he did. So they can go after all the things, all of the monies that circulated around these charges, this conviction. So they can't just go after, your kid's college fund. You know what I mean? Or something like that. You know what I mean? It's going to have to be, unless you used it, to fund some of these illegal actions type of thing. So civil lawsuits and settlements. Let's talk about that. So Combs faces a multiple, the key word there being multiple, civil lawsuits alleging physical abuse, sexual abuse. This is coming from my source of people.com, okay? And the Business Insider. He has already settled one, because someone's already going in talking about how he settled those. He only settled one for $20 million already. Now think about how much this is costing him. He's still paying his legal team. Don't forget. Okay? For every motion he files, that means there's hours for that legal team to be putting in. And a retainer that has to be replenished if you have a good attorney. Good attorneys will make you replenish the retainer, which goes pretty fast. Retainer means, it's a very good question. A retainer, I'm sorry, I say stuff and don't know that. A retainer simply means to retain, to keep the attorney. They're often asked to give what they call a retainer, which means this is to get me onto the case and start working on it. I need this amount of money. No, it's a very good, there are no dumb questions here, so don't say that. That you can ask anything. It doesn't matter how simple it sounds. Somebody else wants to know it. So that's why I keep the comments this way. All right. So successful lawsuit could result in like a substantial financial payouts, right? Potentially requiring him to liquidate some assets. So a life after trial. So he spent all that money during the trial, but here we go. We're starting to see the emergence of even more money being taken and paid out. And if you get to the point where you start liquidating, it's a fancy way of saying you have to pawn some of your stuff for the money. I use pawn because people can identify with that, right? If you're, everybody's been to a pawn shop before, right? You maybe need some money. Hopefully it's not some hot goods, but if it's just goods that you're putting in there, and you're getting money for them, but you're going to always have a lesser return, right? You'll be like, this is this is an Alaya or something, whatever you're, a Versace or whatever. To the pawn shop, that's what it sounds like. I don't, Versace, but whatever, that's how much I'm giving to you for it. It turns out to be, you know what I mean? They're not trying to hear that. They don't care who the designer is. You're at a pawn shop, so apparently you need money. So it looks like that. So it's like when people see you're in need, they want to make sure they get their money from you. It changes when you're a rich person that's retaining your wealth and you're a rich person that has to liquidate assets. Changes, right? Just like I used, labels as an example. That if I have a Prada and I am a rich person with a Prada, that's going to make a huge difference than if I am a rich person with a Prada that needs to pawn it for money or put it on consignment. It takes a different turn, right? You're still the same person. People just look at you differently. Facts. I don't know if that's facts. It's just that's what happens. You know what I mean? If you... I like the humanitarian spirit. Somebody said, why is that? And I think that you're seen maybe more as somebody that needs to get their life together more than you are, or people with bad judgment. And everybody likes to stay away from. If you have a lot to lose, you can't afford to attach yourself to somebody with bad judgment. Literally afford, meaning financially as well. Somebody said that's tough. We were talking about that the last video. That is a tough situation to be in. Absolutely. Absolutely. Somebody said interesting. They put it out like that. It's interesting, but interesting. I like the way you wrote that. All right, so legal costs. Here we go with the obvious. Combs will likely face high legal costs association with defending himself on this ongoing civil suits, further impacting his finances. So here we see this is after trial. We're not even talking about all the stuff he paid during the trial. We're talking now he has to continue with the legal team in order to protect what he has. Part of that is also understanding he was convicted of 2 things. So you have to take that into consideration. All of these things cost money. Anytime the legal team files paperwork, that you have to pay them to file it. Any responses, you have to pay them for the responses. Anytime they go and make an appearance for you, you have to pay them for the appearance. So talking to the time that it takes to speak to the president, to file the clemency, all of these things. I mean, this is after the fact. If and when the prosecution files for forfeiture. This is more money that goes out. And it is more money that goes out to the civil suits that he has. He has to keep the same team, right? So now he's got a slew of civil suits. So he is entangled in another court. So So he's going to trial again if they don't settle for all of these. So he's not done. And civil, just think of civil court as money. Criminal court, time to pay for the crime. Civil court, financially pay for the time. So he went from his time being taken away to his money being taken away. And it usually works that if you win the criminal courts, it's easier to do the civil court. That's why they usually do the criminal convictions first, or the criminal trial first. And then they switch over to the civil trial. You usually see that happen first. Even in OJ's case, OJ went to criminal trial. When he was acquitted, it switched over to the civil trial. Now you can still owe civilly. We learned that. If you follow that trial, you know that it didn't end for OJ after the trial. Like, people think trial's over, wrap it up. No, it doesn't work like that. It's really when your troubles begin. Especially if you are financing your little venture, right? For lack of a better description. I'm saying that almost sarcastically. It's not little. That's the point. Is he going to end up broke? I can't even say. I can't even say. I just think when you get to the point, if you have to start liquidating assets, you're probably in trouble. Now, even with the loss, let's just put this into perspective. Okay? You're still, unless you're at zero, not broke. Meaning like regular people broke. Like when a regular person says they're broke, they probably have, negative in their bank account up to zero. Right? Or you paid all your bills and now you only have they don't get to that point. Not from that amount of money he has. But he will get significantly lower. He'll be worth less. His value will be lower overall. But he will still be able to live past, just a regular upper middle class lifestyle. Unless they exceed his assets, meaning whatever he owes or whatever judgment he gets based on these civil exceeds his wealth, right? It exceeds the liquidation. When it exceeds the amount of money he can afford to pay, that's when the judge makes you go in and liquidate. And then when you liquidate, you have to get the money. And then sometimes after that, depending upon the crime, like most of the time in a Ponzi scheme, for example, I'm going off just a little bit, you will find that, because mostly that's civil, in a Ponzi scheme, for example, you'll find that the assets can't be liquidated because they're not of value anymore. Because the money's really spent already. It's just still there on paper. It doesn't appear that he has those types of finances. He meaning Sean Combs. It looks like Sean Combs actually does have money. He does have things to liquidate. He does have things of value. So that's not going to make him, zero balance unless he would have gotten convicted. But for the most part, for RICO, because he would have owed so much. And he would still have to pay his legal team. So this is not to say that it can't still happen, but he wasn't at the point of liquidation because he didn't get convicted of that. So we don't have to go down that particular road. We're going down another road now. Anything financial has to be related to what he was convicted of. So you can wash your hands of that part. RICO, we don't have to worry about what's going to happen if he's convicted of RICO. He wasn't, and he won't be. Now we go from this point. So you can't just randomly take money from people. You can't just say, oh, he needs to pay for his crimes in the sense, I'm just going to say he needs to pay out money. You have to file motions for that. And there are certain motions you have to file. And certain courts you have to file them in. And this is the part we're trying to see with his life after trial. We're starting to see that his legal problems are not at the end. And you have to remember this. It's not just him. It's also his children. 2 of his sons have civil suits against them too. They haven't even touched those necessarily because they were waiting for this big, huge... You have to know where to go from the trial itself of the criminal actions. Because you have to know what you can go after, right? Can't go after what you don't know is happening, so you wait. You wait until he's convicted of something. If anything at all. Would a pardon take away that? Yes. He gets pardoned, that includes fees, fines. It's basically saying you don't we're not going to, only thing that's he's going to be left with if he gets a pardon is that it might still be on his record. And literally, you could fight for that in the courtroom at the time. You can say, well, at least in California, you can. I'm not sure how that works in other states, but you can actually say, you can file it almost simultaneously, where you're just like, hey, I'd like to see if we can get these records sealed. Now, I take that back. I retract that. That's not true. Because it's a criminal case. So you have to wait to expunge it, which is separate than sealing it in the state of California. So it's possible, I have to look that up, please do, somebody correct me, because they're two separate actions, I was looking at it that way. You had one that could possibly be a sealing, and an expungement is an expungement. The same in other states. Some states have that as one thing. You would actually be challenging the legalness of it, but you could try to see if you can make that work. It is not common practice to do that, by the way. It's me kind of making up what I think you could quite possibly do. This is what got me in trouble and when I went to law school, because I would be like, but if it means this, couldn't you technically apply it? And the teacher would be like, yes, but you're kind of making something up, but yes, you can. I guess you could try it. So this is me like trying it. Like, could you? I mean, more than likely, probably no, but I mean, I don't know. I feel like if you're in court, give it a shot. There's a laughing face. I know, right? Hey, I'm here to explore things. I don't know. I'm just guessing. I don't know. More than likely, you do have to wait a certain amount of time to expunge a record. But if expungement is separate from a sealing in this particular state, could you maybe say, not necessarily expunge it, but just seal it? Can we just seal it but not expunge it until the time? I don't know. Somebody tell. I did make that up. I feel like I did, but it might be something somebody actually did at one point. I'll look it up and then come back in the next video and let you know if I made that up. I'm not making up the fact that those are separate. That's the truth. They are separate in that state. But let me double check that. Let me just ask the common question, right? What's with the laughing? I get it. I mean, I'm just saying, I probably made that up. I'm just saying it. I'm just saying if they're two separate things, I mean, can't you treat them as two separate things? I stay on one, do I? Food for thought. Is that really food for thought, or am I just making stuff up? Criminal court is different, well, because I was just saying that like in a general. So instead of, you can petition the court to have the criminal record sealed, because there's no true expungement in California. So I might not have been completely, Somebody said, Thank you for the support. No, I mean, I get it that you would, so just to give, California does not have a true expungement process where records are completely erased, right? I don't think in general, expungement erases, it erases it depends on how you view it. But to utilize this particular thing inside the courtroom, because it's sort of like a separate thing, like they're saying that there's no official expungement in California, therefore sealing is different. So since it's not an official thing, but it is a thing, you can get an expungement. But a sealing is separate. So could you, somebody let me know that has a legal background, couldn't you go to the court at the same time and ask that the record be sealed? Because it's separate? Couldn't you have that as an argument? I can say that this, we're understanding, we're not saying expunge necessarily erased. We're just asking that it's not visible so he can work. Can you do that? Somebody said sounds made up. Somebody said they have to look it up. I mean, I'm walking a line here, or is that something that people normally do? The time with which I'm saying. What do you mean, like not immediately at the time? Somebody said it's a separate motion. It is. What do you mean? From what you go to court for? Like, say, in the civil case? You couldn't file also a separate motion but still be heard at the same time. I'm saying, yes, it's separate. I understand what you're saying. No, I am agreeing that it's a separate motion. But I'm saying, couldn't you have it heard at the same time? I guess that would be my optimum question. If this is too technical for everybody, I'm sorry. I don't know how I got started on this, but I feel like can it be heard at the same time as whatever else you're there for? Can you get that sealed? Even a better question, can you get that sealed with him still being convicted of the crime in the criminal court? Can we still seal the criminal part of it? Or is there a time that you have to wait to do that for it to be heard? Anybody? Okay, that's probably too much. Okay, we'll move on. We'll look it up and figure it out. All right. So I'm just curious. Now I've got myself on a tangent. So it says in some cases, the California Department of Justice may automatically seal arrest records, eliminating the need for court petition at all. There goes my answer. So there's another way to do what I'm asking. You can actually do what I'm saying, but you don't have to do it in court. Because California has the Department of Justice will allow that to be automatically sealed. So you may not have to worry about it being visible in public records. Even though we all know what happened, it doesn't mean you still have to have it on your record for work purposes. Yeah, so it says the benefits of sealing records is to prevent employers and landlords. He doesn't need employers or landlords, but he doesn't need people constantly reminded that he got convicted of a crime. If he goes back to working and doing business, if he gets a pardon. Or just any time. You wouldn't want something like that on your record. Somebody said they didn't know expungement is a real thing. No, an expungement, yeah. I think expungement in some states, and I can't speak for every state, but in some states, it has to be a period of time. So maybe after 3 years or something like that. You can go in and expunge them. Expungement means to move it, though. Like remove it. I think certain levels can see it, but for the most part, it's not seen. It's removed, in a sense. Sealing means it's not necessarily removed, but you can't see it. So I was taking the theory that since they're separate in California, because they're not technically, one and the same, could you sort of petition for them to be sealed, even if they don't take them away? I was thinking of it that in a technical sense. But the answer to that question is you don't do either one. You can go to the Department of Justice and see if you can get them automatically sealed, at least the arrest records, automatically sealed, and you don't have to go to court for it. All right? Little off the tangent, but a little bit of just some legal backing on that one. All right. I was literally asking because I was figuring it out at the time while I was talking to you guys. Just to be open. I mean, just to see, if anybody out there knew. And apparently quite a couple of you understood it. And some detail. Mm-hmm. I'm just kidding. You could see what kind of attorney I would be. No, hey. The law, I love semantics, so I can take some wording And you might have intended it for it to be here, but the wording says specifically that you can use it for this, and it's something that's going to help my client. Yeah, I would put it over there. Judge would be looking and be like, this is... There's a couple of times, like I said, they were like, I don't know if this is a real thing, what you're doing right now. I can't exactly say it's not real, but it's at the filing, you know. I did that all throughout law school. They'd be like that. Like in mute court, you know, it's like the fake court you have. They would say, why, yeah, you know, like I would be walking this fine line on a particular law, and they'd be like, I don't know if you can use that like that. That's just my way. All right, so we have been talking life after trial for Sean Combs, Diddy Combs, forever on everybody's minds and thoughts. And what's going to happen to him, his fortune? Where does he go from here? Will he get a pardon? You know, what happens if he doesn't get one? He's got civil suits regardless. So he's going to have to answer to those and speak to those and take care of those. One settled already, settled for, according to records by people.com, $20 million. Anybody? Questions, comments, anything? You said I normally make stuff sound simple. Was that, you know why that doesn't sound simple, talking about the expungement and the sealing of the documents? It's because I was sort of not sure if you could actually do that. And it turns out you technically there's another process, and that's going to the Department of Justice. So you can do that, but not the way that I was saying it. I mean, you could try it and see if the judge will grant it, but technically you don't do it that way, because there's no real expungement process in California. But sealing it's definitely its own process. So you can separate the two that way, make them into two separate things. File a motion and ask the argument to be, because you're not asking for the record to be removed, you're just asking for it to be recovered. But there's a process for that. Department of Justice can keep you from going to court by you just going in there and petitioning from their end. All right. For all you legal people, I love when I have legal people in here. Some of you are legal students. You're just writing stuff down, aren't you? You're trying to write down, taking that to class. Anything that gets you through law school, I'm telling you, is not the easiest school to get through. Until I write that down, I understand. Put that in your report or whatever you write now, your case studies. That's funny. Questions, comments, anything? Now, here's an interesting one. Somebody said, it's sad to see him end up like this, meaning Sean Combs. You said him, so I'm assuming you mean Diddy. I think people say, yeah, this is in reference to role models. This person's talking about how he could have been so much more for the young black men. For any specifically young black men, but any black man, I understand. I mean, they're people, right? I feel like we breathe too much life into a celebrity as if they maybe came with their own problems already. We don't know. Money doesn't somehow make you different than what you are, in the sense it just highlights what you already have. So if you were already kind of like doing that and living that life like that, you're not going to suddenly, unless you want to, zip into a whole nother lifestyle because you have money now. All you can do now is afford to do more of what you were already doing. Does that make sense? That's why I feel, how I feel about it. Were they looking up to him in the first place, though, like that, like you're saying? Or definitely they were. Anybody young and okay, yeah, they were. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, he said yes, he did. Are you this is not even, I'm not racist at all, but you're black, right? Okay. So I just wanted to know, because you're saying yes, he was, as if you were looking up to him. I just wondered if you were fitting what this lady said before. I feel like women give more of a sensitive approach. Like we always try to, we're just more delicate as far as our sensitivities to people. So it's a very interesting point. And then it's almost heartbreaking to hear some validation from that coming from this young man. I don't know if you're young, but whatever age you guys are. All right, you guys, I don't know. The saga continues. I mean, it's we have some civil stuff coming up. We're going to have to, see what ends up happening at his sentencing. It isn't until October. So we have some time in between there. We're going to see if he gets pardoned in between that time. Yeah, someone asked that earlier. If he gets pardoned, will there be a need for a sentencing? The answer is no. If he will be pardoned means he's literally it might still be of record, but there are no there's nothing. It's over. He doesn't have to serve any time. He doesn't have to pay any fines. He does nothing like that. I think more than likely there will probably, especially if he gets a pardon, they're not going to leave it on his record. They're probably going to take it off. They probably would take it off even if he ended up going to jail and getting out. I don't think you leave, especially with a strong attorney, like a strong legal team like that, you don't leave something like that undone. And if they don't, then he should, as the client, make them get busy with that. If he ends up serving time and he eventually has a record, he should have that taken off his record in some way. Sealed or expunged or whatever happens. Even though we all know what happened. We know who he is. We understand that it's going to be there. Just for completion of legal work, you should at least pose the question of having that either sealed or removed. Whatever the time is. I think that just good legal work. I think it makes you, I'm looking at it not even from the client's point of view, because we all know who they had a celebrity client in this particular case. But I think for you to do your job and be complete at your job, that should be part of it. You should go in to try to make sure, even though we all know, just complete your work as the legal team. That should be part of it. In my opinion. That is just my opinion of doing legal work. I like to do a thorough job. I think that's part of being thorough. To at least pose the question, yes. Questions, comments, anything? Somebody brought that up the last time. Yes, I did. I told you early on. Okay, this is going backwards, and then I won't spend too much time on it because I want to just move us forward. But I will go backwards and say I wasn't trying to diss the prosecution, as you state. When I made that video, which is still up, I literally was letting everybody that watched me make them aware that there's steps to convicting someone of RICO, of all the things. In any federal court, it is always going to require more of a strong legal ability. It's past just knowing the law. You can't just know the law and beat a rap and really convict someone of RICO. It's not enough to just know the law. You can't just, just because someone has a job doesn't mean they're necessarily great at it. A great person goes into a federal court and makes what happened need to happen, which means if you have a RICO case and it's that strong, you're knowing when you take it in there that no matter what the defense team throws at you, because it is lost by the defense team, meaning that defense team is going to overpower you and they're going to win for their client. So if you're going up against a team like that, you've got a client like this, you can't just go in there with some mediocre stuff. You need to raise that expectation, raise what you're doing. And I didn't see that coming out of that team, unfortunately, at the time. And then later, I kept giving them the benefit of the doubt. But the beginning stages, when I said that very early on in the trial, it was because I just noticed it right away. So I was like, oh, no, this is not the team for that. This is not the team for them. You have to think about who the client is. Puffy is Sean Diddy Combs, what is he like? So if you know what he's like, then you're going to know what type of team he picks. So you look at the defendant, and you say, what type of person is this defendant? Okay, you tend to pick people like you. So he's going to pick a defense team that's very confident, that's very, tough, that's going to, make sure you understand there's nothing wrong with his lifestyle, because Diddy doesn't feel like that. So he's going to pick people that can defend him the same way. It's picking yourself, but not being able to speak for yourself. So you got to pick people that can speak for you. And that's what they did. They did just that. They went in there and said, listen, I don't care whether you agree with my lifestyle or not. That's not what he's here for. Type of thing. Aren't you living this lifestyle? And you're over there going, well, according to Statute 67, you're not supposed to do that. It's like, that's not going to work. And it didn't work. Not for RICO. So I was like, that's probably not going to work out. And so I just expressed it honestly. It's what ended up happening with it. I wasn't trying to be mean. And I'm not saying that they're not good at their job, period. I was just saying in this particular case, you needed to adjust what you were doing. Because that's just, it's federal court. You go in there with your best game face on, especially if you're going up against a celebrity, because they're going to always pick the best teams. Maybe not even well-known teams sometimes. Sometimes a case gets a break from the legal assistant. And you're like, oh, what? What'd you just say? Sometimes strong teams are generally strong teams all around. Meaning you start hiring people that, you can cultivate. You start hiring people that come up with stuff. And that's how you have teams like Johnny Cochran had. The late, great Johnny Cochran. And I always use him as an example because it was the first time people could see it. They saw up against a very strong prosecution team. Don't think because Marcia Clark and Christopher Darden lost that they weren't a strong team. Yes, they were. But you saw that little extra in that defense team. So I always use Johnny Cochran as an example because his entire team was good. And even if you were deficient in one area, that he could compensate by having somebody else stronger in that area on the team. And he used everybody, including his legal assistants. So I feel like that's, if you wanted to get RICO carried out, you needed that type of thinking to go up against the type of client not the type of client, the type of defendant you actually had. Make sense? All right. All right, you guys, I think we're wrapping it up. Questions, comments, anything, any parting? For clear, you said you didn't care if I was beating up the prosecution team. You will never hear me, jack some people up, because unless you're just doing really bad. But I just do point out the obvious, because it's kind of like you can't. Listen, you couldn't have gone into a case with a more opposite thought process in order to prove RICO than this particular team had. And this is no disrespect to the team. It's just why they lost the case. They were literally all the way on the wrong side. Meaning they were highlighting the wrong stuff. They were forgetting, to pull it together. I think at the end, even with the closing arguments, you needed to have people with you. You needed to say, we get it. You needed to go in there really not focusing on that. And you will remember that I said, don't focus on the freak-offs. Do not go in there focusing on the freak-offs, because it's too much variance. You don't know on that jury who actually does those types of things. Don't assume it's going to shock everybody. And that was the truth. Because whether we like it or not, that's some people's reality. And don't think they're public about it. They're probably keeping it under wraps. So when you go in my thought was, if you have a case like this, he has supporters on that juror, no matter who they are. Not that they support him specifically, but they support that lifestyle. Maybe not even to the extent that he does it, but they support the lifestyle. So you go in there with the understanding that some of the people on that jury support that, even if they don't say it out loud. And that would have made for a better, a more believability to convict him. You cannot convict people for being freaky. And it kept coming across that way no matter what you said. Even when Cassie came and she was pregnant and she cried and she did all these things, you still were like, wait a minute, aren't you the one that called the Punisher? Because the name alone, I would have just said, just use your name. Do not let this jury hear you say your name is the Punisher. We're not doing that. Just go ahead and leave that out. Or say, when I work, they call me that. I mean, I would have cleared that way up. Because once he said the Punisher, everybody was like, one of your key witnesses called a man for Puffy, who she called her husband at the time, and his name was the Punisher. Her credibility just zoop. Just like 6 drops right there. So, I mean, I don't want to rehash the trial, but I mean, those are the things that you heard me say, and that's why I was saying those things. I was just saying, why did you let that pass? Why would you say that? Even I think Jane said she was about that life or something like that, or she lived that life or something like that. Or it might have been one of the witnesses. I'm not sure which one it was, and they didn't correct it. I was like, oh my God, you guys are not going to win this case. So that's where I was coming from. I wasn't coming from a place that they're not good at their job. I was just saying, you're letting way too much slide. And who's going to have to clean this up? Who's going to have to answer those questions if you don't answer them as the prosecution team? The defense is going to come in there and answer them. And they're more than happy to, because it helps them confuse the jury. Take them off of what you're trying to do. So that's why it looked like I was killing the prosecution, but I really wasn't. I was just making sure. Right. Well, I mean, I say to the point because I'm just going to get to the point. I'm not really going to like try to color it and make it sound all, I said they're not doing a good job. They're doing terrible right now. And that's because that's what was happening at the time. So I can't, everyone asks me, do I think 47 will pardon? I think it's not an easy decision. I think the decision was made difficult by Sean's relationship with Diddy because of the comments that he probably made just making them at the time. I think he will end up, yes. I think he will end up paying someone's asking me in the civil cases, do I think Diddy will pay money out? I do. I really do. I think he will end up. I mean, I don't think he's going to be able to settle all those. I think not because he necessarily should or shouldn't. I'm saying that it's going to be colored in point of view by what happened in the trial. The trial was covered very heavily, and you can pretend like you didn't notice it, but some of those people that were super Cassie, root for Cassie fans, whether she was in the life or not, she didn't deserve what happened to her people. No, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying this is the fact. Are going to want him to pay for that. So that's why. And since they couldn't do it, or they feel like an injustice for him getting not convicted of RICO, you can feel it in the civil trial. You can sort of feel somewhat vindicated if he's at least found to have to pay for something. You know what I mean? You feel a little bit more vindicated. And I think those opinions, yes, I do. I think those opinions will go into the civil trials if they don't settle them outside of court. You feel bad for his sons? Those are their trials. They're not a part of Sean's trial. They have their own civil suits. And that's their behaviors. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I mean, not everybody does what their parents tell them to do, right? And the ages that they were, they weren't babies. They were old enough to participate, and they could have chose not to. So you can't blame, their father's activities. I mean, you could say that they were influenced by him, obviously, but you can't, to carry something like that out, can't blame the father for what a grown man is doing, or grown men are doing. Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying. You're trying to say he influenced it. I understand. All right, anything else, questions, comments? I have to wrap it up, finish up the rest of my day, and, I want to thank you guys for being here. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Try to catch this when you can because it's long. I'm probably not going to leave it up. And if you guys hear this, I'll see you guys next time.